All right, let's dive deep into modern relationships.
Okay.
Specifically, we're looking at this conversation between Sahara Rose and Robert Edward Grant.
Right.
Um, you sent this to me, and I have to say,
Mm-hmm.
it was fascinating.
Yeah.
A lot to think about.
There really is.
But if I had to kind of boil it down
Mm-hmm.
to one central, tension or question,
Yeah.
it would be this. How do we balance that desire to be our true selves with the very human need
Right.
to be loved and accepted?
Totally. And I think, you mentioned Sahara's work on ancestral patterns really resonating with you.
Oh, yeah.
I think that ties in here too, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're carrying all this baggage
Yeah.
from past generations into our dating apps.
This is true.
Into our relationships.
Like her grandmother's forced marriage, for example.
Exactly.
It really makes you question,
Yeah.
like, how much have we actually evolved
Right.
when it comes to love?
Are we really more free or just scared of commitment?
Okay, so before we get too far ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
let's go back to Sahara's personal journey.
Sure.
I'm really interested in that dark night of the soul she describes
Yeah.
after her divorce.
Right.
It sounds like a real turning point.
It was.
Now, you mentioned her work with plant medicine intrigues you.
Yeah.
And I know this might sound a bit woo-woo to some people,
Right.
but she actually started seeking out San Pedro ceremonies 10 years before her divorce.
It's true.
But then life happened. She got married instead.
Yeah.
Almost like that initial desire got put on hold,
Mm-hmm.
only to come back even stronger later on
Right.
when she eventually did sit with ayahuasca.
See a full circle moment.
It is.
Yeah.
So what were some of the key insights
Okay.
she gleaned from all this,
Like-
especially regarding relationships?
One of the things that really struck me
Yeah.
was how she talks about this pressure to present a perfect version of ourselves
Oh, yeah.
online and in relationships.
It's exhausting.
It is.
But it's like, we're all doing it.
Right. And it stems from that fear of rejection.
Totally.
We don't want to show our messy bits.
Right.
So we end up hiding our true selves.
Which ironically keeps us from finding those deep connections we crave.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, how can you have real intimacy if you're not being real?
Right.
It's like we're all trying to fit into this Kardashian consciousness mold,
Yeah.
even if it means sacrificing authenticity.
And you know what? It's not just about presenting a fake self.
Going?
It's also about seeking a partner who fits a specific role
Okay.
instead of seeing them as a complex individual.
So we're basically treating relationships like transactions,
In a way, yeah.
expecting specific needs to be met
Right.
instead of appreciating the whole person.
Exactly.
No wonder so many people feel dissatisfied.
And this ties into the rise of situationships, right?
Okay, break that down for me.
So you enjoy each other's company.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's physical intimacy,
Okay.
but both people are terrified of going deeper emotionally.
So you're basically getting the benefits of a relationship
Yeah.
without any of the commitment.
Right.
But then the question becomes, why are we so afraid of vulnerability?
It's a good question.
Is it just like a modern dating phenomenon?
I don't think so.
Or is there something deeper going on?
Well, Sahara believes it comes from this idea that love equals a loss of freedom.
Interesting.
It's like we view relationships as cages,
Right.
trapping us and limiting our independence,
Yeah.
instead of seeing them as opportunities for growth and expansion.
But isn't that a bit of a warped perspective?
I think so.
I mean, can't true love actually expand our sense of freedom?
Absolutely.
Personally, I felt more empowered in relationships where I can truly be myself,
Mm-hmm.
flaws and all.
Yeah, and I think Sahara would agree with you there.
Got
She
it.
argues that true freedom actually comes from embracing the full spectrum of human experience, including the messy parts,
Right.
the shadow parts of ourselves.
Yeah.
And she sees it as a sacred union, a partnership where you can weather the storms together.
That's beautiful.
It is,
And evolve together.
yeah,
So it's not about looking for someone who completes us.
no.
It's about being complete within ourselves
Mhm.
and then sharing that wholeness with someone else,
Exactly.
supporting each other's growth.
I like that. And that's where the discussion of ancestral patterns gets really interesting.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
You're going to have to break that down for me.
Sure.
Because how can something like our grandparents' relationship
Okay.
impact our love life today?
All right, think about it this way. You inherited certain physical characteristics from your ancestors,
Right.
right?
Yeah, of course.
Well, you also inherit emotional patterns,
Okay.
beliefs about love,
Mm.
ways of relating to others.
So it's in our DNA?
It's all encoded in your DNA.
That's fascinating. So let me see if I understand this correctly.
Yeah.
If someone's family history is, let's say, full of tumultuous relationships or conditional love,
Right.
they might unconsciously be drawn to partners who recreate those patterns.
Exactly.
Or they might subconsciously sabotage their own relationships.
Yeah.
Because deep down,
Yeah.
they don't believe they deserve healthy love.
Right.
Wow. That's both fascinating and a little terrifying.
It is.
But if we're unconsciously acting out these old scripts,
Yeah.
how do we even begin to change them?
That's where the work begins.
Okay.
The first step is simply acknowledging that these patterns exist,
Right.
that they might be influencing you in ways you weren't even aware of.
So it's about becoming conscious of those unconscious patterns,
Exactly.
bringing them out of the shadows into the light of our awareness.
That's it.
Okay, so we've identified some patterns.
Yeah.
Let's say we realize our family has a history of codependency
Okay.
or a fear of commitment.
Sure.
What do we do with that information?
Well, the first step is acknowledging it.
Okay.
But then you can start questioning those beliefs. Do they still hold true for you? Do they align with your values and your vision for your own relationships?
It's like we're given this script at birth,
Right.
but we have the power to edit it,
Yes.
to rewrite it, to create a new narrative for ourselves.
And that's incredibly empowering.
It is.
You're not bound by the limitations of your family history.
Right.
You can choose to create something different,
Yeah.
something more aligned with your true self.
You know, as you're talking about this, I can't help but think about Sahara's analogy of love as oxygen.
Oh, interesting.
It seems to connect with this idea of freedom in relationships.
How so?
Well, she argues that we often view love as this liability,
Yeah.
as something that restricts our freedom or makes us vulnerable. It's like we're afraid to fully inhale love
Right.
because we're scared of suffocating.
Yeah, I get that.
Or maybe we're just scared of getting hurt,
Right.
of having our hearts broken.
It makes sense.
So we hold our breath, just taking these shallow sips of love instead of allowing ourselves to be fully immersed in it.
I see what you're saying.
But what if, like, oxygen love is actually essential for our well-being?
Okay.
What if it's not something to be feared,
Right.
but something to be embraced?
Interesting.
So instead of restricting our freedom, true love actually expands it.
That's the idea.
It gives us more space to breathe,
Yeah.
to grow, to become more fully ourselves.
I think you're onto something there.
And that makes me think about the whole situationship phenomenon again.
Okay. How so?
It's like we're trying to get the benefits of oxygen
Right.
without actually breathing deeply.
I see.
We're getting a little bit of connection,
Yeah.
a little bit of intimacy, but we're not allowing ourselves to be fully present,
Right.
fully vulnerable.
It's like we're afraid of the perceived constraints of a real relationship.
Exactly.
So we settle for these surface level connections that leave us feeling empty and unfulfilled.
And it all circles back to that fear of losing freedom.
It does.
But what if, by clinging to that fear, we're actually limiting our potential for experiencing true joy and fulfillment in our relationships?
It's a good question.
It's like a paradox.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do we even begin to challenge this fear?
Well, Sahara challenges us to question this whole idea of freedom for what?
Okay.
Are we seeking freedom to protect ourselves from pain? Or are we seeking freedom to fully embrace the beauty and messiness of life, including love?
I think for a lot of people, it's
Yeah.
probably a combination of both.
It probably is.
Right.
Yeah.
It's almost like we need to redefine what freedom means
I agree.
in the context of relationships. It's not about being unattached or independent,
Right.
but about having the freedom to be fully ourselves,
Yeah.
to express our authentic selves without fear of judgment or rejection,
Exactly.
and to choose to share our lives with someone who celebrates that authenticity, who encourages our growth,
Yeah.
who loves us for who we truly are, flaws and all.
Flaws and all.
That makes me think about Sahara's comment that we're all shit sandwiches.
It's a bit crude,
It is.
but it gets the point across.
It does.
We all have our baggage,
Yeah.
our quirks,
Our imperfections.
our imperfections.
It's about finding someone whose stuff complements our own.
It's not about finding someone who's perfect.
Right.
Because perfect doesn't exist.
No.
It's about finding someone who's willing to embrace the messiness of life alongside you. Someone who sees your flaws as part of your beauty.
Okay, but how do we find someone whose stuff complements our own?
That's a good question.
How do we know if someone's baggage is going to clash with ours
Yeah.
or create a beautiful tapestry together?
Well, that's where the work of self-awareness comes in.
Oh.
The more you understand your own patterns,
Yeah.
your own triggers, your own shadow side, the better equipped you are to choose partners who are compatible with you on a deeper level.
So it's not just about knowing what you want in a partner.
Right.
It's about knowing yourself.
Exactly.
It's about understanding your own needs, your own desires,
Yeah.
and your own capacity for giving and receiving love.
It all starts with you. It starts with getting curious about your family history.
Yep.
What were the love stories you grew up around?
So like asking our parents about their relationships,
Not just your parents,
Oh.
like broader,
extended family,
like aunts, uncles.
the whole crew.
Okay, so it's like
Yeah.
we're doing a deep dive into our family tree.
Right.
But instead of looking for names and dates, we're searching for patterns,
Yeah,
beliefs about love.
exactly.
Okay, I like that.
So ask yourself,
Yeah.
what did love look like in your parents' relationship? What messages did you receive about love,
Okay.
about partnership, about commitment from your family?
And I imagine...
Those messages aren't always explicitly stated.
Absolutely not.
Right.
No.
Sometimes it's more about the unspoken rules, the energy,
Yes.
the dynamics
Exactly.
that played out between our parents or caregivers.
You got it.
Wow.
Those subtle cues can be even more powerful than outright statements.
It's true.
And once you start paying attention,
Yeah.
you might be surprised by what you uncover.
Okay, so let's say we've identified some patterns.
Okay.
Maybe we realize our family has a history of codependency
Okay.
or fear of commitment.
Right.
What do we do with that information?
That's how.
How do we actually break free
Yeah.
from those ancestral scripts?
The first step is acknowledging they exist,
Yeah.
that they might be influencing you
Right.
in ways you weren't even aware of.
So it's about becoming conscious of those unconscious patterns,
Yes.
bringing them out of the shadows into the light of our awareness.
Precisely.
Okay, and then what?
And then you can start questioning those beliefs. Okay.
Do they still hold true for you?
Right.
Do they align with your values and your vision for your own relationships?
It's like we're given the script at birth,
Yes.
but we have the power to edit it,
You do.
to rewrite it, to create a new narrative for ourselves.
Exactly, and that's incredibly empowering.
It is.
You're not bound by the limitations of your family history.
Right.
You can choose to create something different,
Yeah.
something more aligned with your true self.
You know, as you're talking about this,
Mm-hmm.
I can't help but think about Sahara's analogy of love as oxygen.
Oh, interesting.
It seems to connect with this idea of freedom
Well,
in relationships.
tell me more.
Well, she argues that we often view love as a liability,
Okay.
as something that restricts our freedom
Right.
or makes us vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's like we're afraid to fully inhale love
Yeah.
because we're scared of suffocating.
I get that.
Or maybe we're just scared of getting hurt.
Of having our hearts broken.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So we hold our breath,
Mm-hmm.
just taking these shallow sips of love
Yeah.
instead of allowing ourselves to be fully immersed in it.
Totally.
But what if,
Mm.
like, oxygen,
Yeah.
love,
Yeah.
is actually essential for our well-being?
Okay.
What if it's not something to be feared,
Mm-hmm.
but something to be embraced?
Interesting.
So instead of restricting our freedom,
Yeah.
true love actually expands it.
That's the idea.
It gives us more space to breathe,
Mm-hmm.
to grow,
Right.
to become more fully ourselves.
I think you're right.
And that makes me think
Gotcha.
about the whole situationship phenomenon again.
Okay, how so?
It's like we're trying to get the benefits of oxygen
Right.
without actually breathing deeply.
I see.
We're getting a little bit of connection,
Yeah.
a little bit of intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not allowing ourselves to be fully present,
Right.
fully vulnerable.
It's like we're afraid of commitment. Afraid of the constraints of a real relationship.
So we settle
Yeah.
for these surface level connections.
That ultimately leave us feeling empty and unfulfilled.
Right.
Yeah.
And it all circles back
It does.
to that fear of losing freedom.
Right.
But what if,
Yeah.
by clinging to that fear,
Mm-hmm.
we're actually limiting our potential
Okay.
for experiencing true joy
Mm-hmm.
and fulfillment in our relationship.
That's a paradox.
It is.
Yeah.
So how do we challenge this fear?
Sahara challenges us to question this idea of freedom for what?
Okay.
Are we seeking freedom to
Yeah.
protect ourselves from pain?
Right.
Or are we seeking freedom to
Mhm.
fully embrace the beauty and messiness of life,
Yeah.
including love?
I think for a lot of people,
Yeah,
it's probably a combination of both.
probably.
Right.
Yeah,
It's almost like we need to redefine
yeah.
what freedom means
What do you...
in the context of relationships.
Absolutely.
It's not about being unattached or independent,
Yeah.
but about having the freedom to be fully ourselves,
Yes.
to express our authentic selves
Mm-hmm.
without fear of judgment or
Yeah.
rejection,
Exactly.
and to choose to share our lives with someone who celebrates that authenticity,
Absolutely.
who encourages our growth,
Yeah.
who loves us for who we truly are, flaws and all.
Flaws and all. Which makes me think about Sahara's comment that we're all shit sandwiches.
It's a bit crude,
I know it is.
but it gets the point across.
It does.
We all have our baggage,
Right.
our quirks,
Our imperfections.
our imperfections.
It's about finding someone whose stuff complements our own.
It's not about finding someone who's perfect,
No.
because perfect doesn't exist.
It's about finding someone who's willing to embrace the messiness
Yeah,
of life alongside you.
right.
Someone who sees your flaws as part of your beauty.
Exactly.
But seriously, how do we find someone
That's the
whose
question.
stuff complements our own?
How do we know if someone's baggage is going to clash with ours
Yeah.
or create a beautiful tapestry together?
Well, that's where the work of self-awareness comes in. The more you understand your own patterns, your own triggers, your own shadow side,
Yeah.
the better equipped you are to choose partners who are compatible with you on a deeper level.
So it's not just about knowing
Right.
what you want in a partner.
No.
It's about knowing yourself,
It is.
understanding your own needs,
Yes.
your own desires, and your own capacity for giving and receiving love.
Exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
speaking of deal breakers, Sahara doesn't shy away
No, she doesn't.
from addressing some of the more challenging aspects
Right.
of modern dating culture.
Like what?
Like, she really calls out
Yeah.
this idea of using each other's bodies
Okay.
without truly opening up emotionally.
That resonated with me.
Yeah.
Like, we've normalized this transactional approach to intimacy,
Right.
where it's more about seeking validation
Okay.
or escaping loneliness
Right.
than truly connecting
Yeah.
on a soulful level.
So it makes me wonder,
Yeah.
are we so afraid of genuine intimacy that we'd rather settle
Right.
for these fleeting moments of pleasure,
Yeah.
even if they ultimately leave us
Right.
feeling empty and disconnected?
It's a tough question,
It is.
but one worth pondering.
Right.
Are we using each other
Yeah.
as distractions from our own loneliness, our
Yeah.
own fear of vulnerability?
Or are we genuinely seeking connection,
It could be that.
but haven't yet learned how to create it in a healthy,
Yeah,
sustainable way?
it's possible.
Which brings me to another point
Okay.
Sahara makes. She talks about this rape and pillage consciousness
Yeah.
that she sees permeating modern dating culture.
It's strong language.
It is strong language.
But I understand where she's coming from.
What's she getting at there?
She's pointing to a pattern of objectification
Okay.
and detachment.
So it's less about
Yeah.
seeing the other person
Right.
as a whole human being
Exactly.
and more about what they can do for us
Right.
in that moment.
In that moment.
So it's like a taking mentality
Yeah.
rather than a giving mentality.
A focus on getting our own needs met
Right.
without considering the impact on the other person.
And that can show up in subtle ways,
It can.
like ghosting someone after a few dates
Right.
or leading someone on without any intention of committing.
Yeah.
It's a disregard for the other person's feelings
Exactly.
and a prioritizing of our own convenience or
Yeah.
pleasure.
Right.
That makes me think about the conversation around leaking sexual energy.
Okay.
It sounds a bit woo-woo,
It does.
but I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
How does Sahara connect that to our relationships and overall well-being?
She argues that leaking sexual energy is essentially about giving away our power,
Okay.
our attention. our life force
to things that don't nourish us.
to things that don't truly nourish us.
Like scattering our seeds
Right.
rather than planting them intentionally.
So instead of focusing our energy on cultivating meaningful connections,
Right.
we're dissipating it.
On fleeting encounters or superficial interactions.
Exactly.
And that leaves us feeling depleted.
Rather than energized.
Right.
Yeah.
And she suggests that conserving our sexual energy allows us to channel it toward our creative pursuits, our spiritual practices.
Right.
And yes, even our relationships.
In a more intentional and empowering way.
So it's not about suppressing our sexuality.
No.
But about becoming more conscious
Right.
of how we express it.
Exactly.
And who we share it with.
It's about aligning our sexual energy with our values, our desires, and our higher purpose.
It's about choosing quality over quantity.
Absolutely.
And making sure that our intimate interactions are truly nourishing and enriching.
Right.
Not just draining and depleting.
Exactly.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Because she seems to be suggesting that our sexual energy is connected to our spiritual energy.
That's a key point.
It's not just about physical pleasure.
Right.
It's about something deeper, more sacred.
And she emphasizes that when we leak our sexual energy, we're essentially leaking our life force.
Wow.
Our vitality.
Okay.
It's like we're dimming our own light
Yeah.
by giving our power away to things that don't truly matter.
Okay, so if conserving our sexual energy is so important
Yeah.
for our overall well-being, how do we actually do that?
It's a challenge.
In a world
Yeah.
that's constantly bombarding us
Right.
with sexual imagery and messages.
It feels like we're swimming upstream.
It does.
Right.
So how do we do it?
It starts with awareness.
Okay.
Becoming conscious of the ways in which we might be leaking our energy.
Give me some examples.
Whether it's through casual hookups,
Okay.
excessive pornography consumption,
Right.
or even just fantasizing about people
Yeah.
we'll never actually connect with.
So it's about becoming more mindful
I see.
of our thoughts,
Yeah.
our desires, and our actions.
And making choices that align with our values
Okay.
and our vision for ourselves.
And it might require setting boundaries,
It might.
saying no to things that don't feel aligned,
Exactly.
and consciously choosing to invest our energy
Yes.
in experiences and relationships
Right.
that truly nourish our souls.
That's it.
You know,
Yeah.
this whole conversation is making me think about
Okay.
the role of spirituality
Yeah.
in modern relationships.
It's an important one.
It feels like a lot of people
Right.
are seeking a partner
Yeah.
who shares their spiritual beliefs. But what does that actually mean in practice?
I think Sahara's perspective on spirituality was really refreshing.
Okay, tell me more.
She emphasizes that true spirituality is not about dogma or rigid beliefs. Okay. But about living a life
Yeah.
that is aligned with our values,
Right.
our purpose, and our highest potential.
So it's less about following a specific religion.
Yeah.
Or spiritual path, and more about cultivating a deep connection to ourselves,
Yes.
to others.
To something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she believes that our relationships can be incredibly powerful catalysts
You can.
for spiritual growth.
They offer us opportunities
Okay.
to learn about ourselves, to
Yeah.
heal old wounds, to practice compassion and forgiveness, and
Right.
to deepen our connection to love.
It's like our relationships are mirrors,
Yeah.
reflecting back to us
Right.
the parts of ourselves that need attention, the patterns that need to be broken,
Exactly.
and the love that needs to be expressed.
You said it.
And when we approach our relationships with that awareness, with that intentionality, they can become profound paths
They can.
to self-discovery
Yeah.
and spiritual awakening.
I love that perspective.
I do too.
It takes the pressure off
Yeah.
of finding the perfect spiritual partner
Right.
and shifts the focus to the inner work, the personal growth that we can do within any relationship,
Right.
regardless of our partner's beliefs.
Okay. But let's be real.
Yeah.
Relationships aren't always rainbows and butterflies.
They're not.
They can be messy,
They can.
challenging,
Right.
and sometimes even downright painful.
Of course.
So how does Sahara address the darker side of relationships?
She doesn't shy away from it.
Right.
In fact, she sees those challenges as integral parts
Oh.
of the journey.
It's like we have to go through the mud to get to the flowers.
It's through those breakdowns that we experience breakthroughs.
It's through those heartbreaks
that
we learn the most valuable lessons about ourselves
Right.
and about love.
Right.
So instead of trying to avoid pain
Right.
or run from it,
Mm-hmm.
we need to lean into it,
Right.
to allow ourselves to feel it fully.
Exactly.
And to trust that it's ultimately guiding us towards something greater.
She talks about the importance of allowing ourselves to feel the full spectrum of human emotions.
Right.
The joys and the sorrows.
Yeah.
The triumphs and the heartbreaks.
That's all part of the dance
It is.
of life.
Right.
And I imagine that dance can be a lot more enjoyable
It can.
when we have a partner
Yeah.
who's willing to move with us,
Right?
to hold our hand through the difficult steps,
Exactly.
and to celebrate the victories
Yes.
along the way.
A true partner is someone who sees us, accepts us,
Yeah.
and challenges us to grow.
Right.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
It's about being real,
It is.
authentic.
Yeah.
And finding that kind of partner, well, that's the real adventure, isn't it?
It is.
So where do we even begin?
Well, before we embark on that adventure, Sahara suggests we do a little inner exploration.
What do you mean?
She challenges us to take a look at our own shadow list.
The shadow list.
Yeah.
Okay, what is that?
It's essentially a list
Yeah.
of all the things that bother us about other people, the qualities that trigger us, the behaviors that we judge or criticize.
So it's about becoming aware
It is.
of our own judgments and projections.
Exactly.
Because often the things that bother us most in others are the things we haven't yet dealt with in ourselves. So she's asking us to consider how those same qualities might be present within ourselves.
Even if we're not consciously aware of them.
Yeah, that's powerful.
It's a powerful exercise in self-reflection and honesty.
So it's not about blaming other people for our triggers or our discomfort.
It's about taking responsibility for our own reactions.
And recognizing that the things we judge in others are often reflections of our own unhealed wounds.
That's a key insight.
Okay, so how does this shadow work?
Well,
Actually help us in our relationships?
She believes that by owning our shadow side, by integrating those disowned parts of ourselves, we actually become more whole, more compassionate, and more capable of creating healthy, fulfilling relationships.
It's like we're clearing out the cobwebs in our own inner world.
So you can create more space for love to flow.
I like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny.
Yeah.
As you're talking about this, I can't help but think about Robert's comment.
What comment?
That God might be on Raya.
Oh, right.
It seems like a joke.
It does.
But there's a deeper message there, isn't there?
Absolutely.
What do you think he means by that?
I think he's saying that love can show up in unexpected places. That we might be limiting ourselves by our beliefs about where and how we're supposed to find it.
Like, we're so focused on finding love in the right places, in the right ways,
that we
might be missing out
on opportunities that are right in front of us.
It's like we need to be open to the possibility that love could be right around the corner, waiting for us to notice it, waiting for us to say yes.
And maybe just God IS on Raya, swiping right on all the beautiful, messy, imperfect souls
who are ready to embrace the adventure of love.
I love that. It feels like we're really starting to get a grasp on this whole modern relationships thing.
Yeah.
But the question is, how do we apply all of this wisdom?
That's the million-dollar question.
Especially in a world that's so obsessed with quick fixes and instant gratification. Right. It's like we want the results without doing the work.
Exactly.
And Sahara actually talks about this.
Oh, does she?
Yeah, she says we often approach spirituality and personal growth from a checklist mentality.
A checklist.
Like we're trying to collect badges of enlightenment.
Interesting.
Instead of truly embodying the principles.
So it's not enough to just read the books, attend the workshops, or have the psychedelic experiences.
Not at all.
We have to actually do the work.
We do.
Integrate the lessons into our daily lives.
It's about walking the walk.
Not just talking the talk.
Exactly.
And she even calls out the spiritual community.
She does.
For sometimes perpetuating this idea that there's some magical formula for finding love or happiness.
Right. Like if we just do all the right things, love will just magically appear.
It's like we're outsourcing our power.
We are.
Instead of realizing that we are the creators of our own reality.
Exactly.
Which makes me think about this whole search
Yeah.
for the divine masculine. It's so easy to get caught up in that archetype.
It is.
To project our idealized image of a partner onto someone who may or may not live up to those expectations.
It's like we're looking for someone to save us.
Yeah.
To complete us.
Instead of realizing that we are already whole and complete within ourselves.
And that's where the work of shadow integration comes in.
Right. If we're constantly projecting our own unhealed wounds or unmet needs onto our partners.
We're never going to experience true intimacy.
Or unconditional love.
Exactly.
So Sahara is challenging us to turn inward. To confront the parts of ourselves that we've disowned or rejected. And to integrate them into our being.
It's not about becoming perfect.
No.
It's about becoming whole.
That's a really powerful shift in perspective.
It is.
It's not about finding someone who's good enough for us.
No.
It's about becoming the kind of person who is capable of giving and receiving love in a healthy, sustainable way.
And that starts with loving and accepting ourselves' flaws and all that.
You mentioned earlier how dating apps can make it easier to avoid vulnerability and commitment.
They can.
Do you think technology is inherently at odds with building deep, meaningful connections?
I don't think it's technology itself.
Okay.
It's how we use it.
How so?
It's so easy to get caught up in the swiping, the matching, the endless stream of options.
It can be overwhelming.
It can.
That we forget that real connection happens offline.
It does.
In the messy, unpredictable spaces of real life.
And Sahara actually uses an interesting analogy.
Oh, tell me.
To describe this phenomenon. She talks about how we're living in a situationship consciousness.
A situationship consciousness.
Where instant gratification and fleeting connections have become the norm.
It's like we're afraid to slow down.
We are.
To savor the moment.
Yeah.
To allow ourselves to be fully present. With another human being.
It's almost like we're treating relationships like disposable commodities.
We consume them quickly and move on.
Exactly.
Without ever truly savoring the flavor or appreciating the nourishment they offer.
But if we're always looking for the next best thing, are we ever truly satisfied?
It's a good question.
This constant seeking can actually prevent us
from experiencing true contentment or fulfillment.
That's the paradox of modern dating.
Wow.
We have more choices than ever before, yet we often feel more disconnected and lonely.
So what's the antidote?
Sahara suggests that the antidote to this loneliness is not to keep swiping, but to cultivate deeper, more meaningful connections.
With ourselves.
Yes.
And with others.
Exactly.
It's about slowing down.
It is.
Being present and choosing quality over quantity.
It's about remembering that true intimacy requires vulnerability, trust, and a willingness to let go of control.
You know, Sahara ends the conversation with a powerful message.
She does.
About embracing uncertainty.
Oh, yeah.
It's like our culture is obsessed with controlling and predicting the future.
Right. We want to know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But that's not how life works.
But true freedom comes from surrendering to the unknown.
It does.
Trusting that life is unfolding.
Yeah.
Exactly as it should.
She even challenges us to question this idea of freedom for what?
Okay.
Are we seeking freedom from commitment, from vulnerability, from the very things that make life meaningful?
It's like we're trying to escape the human experience.
It is.
Instead of fully embracing it.
And I think her message really resonates with a lot of people.
Who are feeling lost.
Yeah.
Or disillusioned with modern relationships.
It's a call to return to ourselves.
Yes.
To reconnect with our hearts.
And to remember that love is not something we find.
No.
But something we cultivate within ourselves.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Well, I think we've officially reached the bottom of this deep dive.
We have.
And I don't know about you.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling pretty energized.
Me too.
It's like we've unearthed some hidden treasures.
Yeah.
Some nuggets of wisdom that we can now take with us.
And apply to our own lives.
And relationships.
Absolutely.
So tell me, what are some of the key takeaways you're going to carry with you from this conversation?
For me, it's about remembering that true freedom comes from within.
Okay.
It's about owning my shadow, embracing my wholeness, and showing up in the world with authenticity and vulnerability.
I love that.
It's about shifting from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
Recognizing that love is not a limited resource, but an infinite wellspring.
That flows through us.
when we open ourselves to it,
Exactly.
it's like we're being invited to step into our power as conscious creators.
To recognize that we have the ability
to
choose love,
to cultivate intimacy,
and to build relationships
that are truly aligned with our souls.
Exactly.
And it's about remembering that the journey of love is not always easy.
It's not.
But it's always worth it.
Well said.
Well, I think that's the perfect note to end on.
I agree.
A huge thank you to you,
yes,
our amazing listener,
for sharing this incredible conversation with us.
And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning of your exploration.
So what are you going to do with all these new insights?
How are you going to apply them?
To your own life and relationships?
Take some time to journal about it.
You could get on it.
Or share your thoughts with a trusted friend.
And most importantly,
yes,
be kind to yourself.
Be kind to yourself.
Along the way.
The journey of love is a lifelong adventure.
It is.
And there's no right or wrong way to navigate it.
Just keep following your heart.
Yes.
Keep trusting your intuition.
Keep showing up with an open mind and an open heart.
Until next time.
Yes.
Keep diving deep. Keep seeking those golden nuggets of wisdom.
And who knows, maybe you'll even find God on Raya.